Thank you, Desiree. Good morning, and welcome to a virtual town hall discussion on the employment impacts of the COVID-19 crisis. Employers of all sizes, from all parts of the Asheville region, and indeed every industry in our region, are making hard decisions today about employee safety and well-being, about workforce retention and business continuity, and contingency planning for a crisis that is proving unpredictable. Today is the first in a series of virtual town halls brought to you by the Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development Coalition for Asheville and Buncombe County. These are free, open to the public, and designed to deliver timely, expert information and much needed guidance for business during the fast-changing circumstances of the current public health crisis. Well-informed decision-making today can better position our residents, our families, and our community, and our regional economy for the recovery that will follow. My name is Clark Duncan, and I serve as Executive Director for the Economic Development Coalition. The EDC is a 25-year partnership of the Buncombe County Commission, Asheville City Council, and the Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce. So on behalf of each of these parties, please join me in offering thanks and a warm welcome to the panelists that have agreed to join us today and offer their time and expertise. I'm going to quickly introduce them before we jump into questions. First, speaking on business continuity and best practices for employee safety, we're joined by Tim Love, Director of Economic Development at Buncombe County and our business liaison to the Emergency Operations Center that's been functional in Buncombe County for the past week and a half. Joining us to discuss support services for the dislocated worker, Rodney Embler, Manager of the NC Works Office for Asheville. Joining us to discuss support services for the employer and the workplace, Nathan Ramsey, Executive Director at the Land of Sky Regional Council and Mountain Area Workforce Development Board. And lastly, in her capacity as a partner at Robertson Stevens, Jackie Grant joins us to share her perspective on the various legal considerations at the workplace during the COVID-19 crisis. So thanks to each of you who have dialed in for making time for this important conversation. I see now that we have right at 200 callers on the line. And given the challenges of managing such a large call, we'll not be able to take questions verbally, but if you'd like to hold a question for the end of our presentation, please use the Q&A function on Zoom, not the chat function. We'll be monitoring the Q&A function at the end of our call and sharing some of those questions specifically with our panel. I would encourage you first to indicate who the question is for, and that would be followed by asking your question. We will facilitate conversation with our panelists throughout the call, and we'll make remaining time at the end to pose as many of these questions as we can get to. And finally, if you or someone you know in your business would like to read or listen to a recorded version of this call, it will be hosted in its entirety on our business resources page, which can be located at www.asheville.org/coronavirus. Reminder, if you're thinking of questions, please use the Q&A function, not the chat function. And with that, we'll jump into our questions.
If I could interject one housekeeping, if you are not speaking, if you could mute your audio when you are not speaking, because we're getting a little bit of feedback that's making it difficult for some of our people to hear. Thank you.
That made all the difference. Thank you, everyone. Tim, I'd like to start with you. I know you've been putting in significant hours with the Buncombe County Emergency Operations Center. We understand that many businesses have already had mandated closures. Others, where possible, are adjusting to telecommuting. And many still are maintaining a very full production schedule at the workplace. Many questions that we're getting that I think might be topical. Would love to hear what kind of guidance you can offer those businesses who are operating at full capacity, prioritizing workplace safety, sanitation practices, and employee health.
Absolutely. And Clark, first off, I want to thank you and your team for hosting this. I think it's super important to have these connections in these times when we can't physically be together. I also want to express, my gratitude and thanks to those that are dialing in today. We know that these are challenging times, and we appreciate your resilience. We'll do whatever we can as we proceed to share information as we can. But to get to the point with Clark, we're following the state's guidance first and foremost on this. But I think the main message for everyone to keep in mind is that to sort of quote unquote flatten the curve, we need to maintain social distancing. And I know we've heard that a lot over the past few days, but this really is the key to make sure that we can keep 6 feet between us for no longer than 10 minutes. That is the main key. And so as you're thinking about your operations, when you're thinking about your business functions, anything you can do to encourage that behavior lowers our community risk. And so that's an important key. That is the number one thing that we can do to support as employers. But additionally, if you have questions about best practices, specific things that you can do, the appropriate types of cleaning solutions, whatever it is, our public health team is here to support you and is working around the clock. And so the resources to keep in mind, if you have questions, we can get you in touch with environmental health or our team here in public health.
So Tim, what's the best way to to access those resources? Is there an email or a website contact?
Absolutely. For general information about this crisis, the Buncombe County website, buncombecounty.org, is going to be the best resource. But additionally, if you have specific questions, in particular related to sanitation, hygiene, the best email address is our environmental health folks at ehrequest@buncombecounty.org. Additionally, if you have questions that are more general, you can email ready@buncombecounty.org at any time.
And those are specifically for sanitation and cleaning questions. I can share, we've heard some best practices from some of our larger employers that are staggering shifts, that are mandating certain sections, certain employees use certain exits or use certain bathrooms so that they're maintaining separation as much as possible at the workplace. But what I hear you saying is that at a minimum, you're in compliance if you're maintaining that safe 6+ foot distance.
That's correct.
Thank you. You raise another good point, which is there are lots of competing sources of information out there on best practices and certainly what's proven to be a fast-paced and set of circumstances. What would you recommend to our business community that's dialing in today as far as best sources for public health guidance that's being updated, daily, if not hourly?
Absolutely. So, our guidance comes from the federal level, comes from the CDC, so the Center for Disease Control. At the state level, it's going to be the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. At the local level, it's going to be buncombecounty.org. So if you're looking for an update on the public health crisis, the number of cases, how to get tested, anything like that, your best source locally is going to be buncombecounty.org. This is really important because, we understand that folks have questions and are talking to one another to try to mitigate their risk. But it's important for us to make sure that we're passing along the right information. Misinformation or rumors in this time can create just as much problems and dynamics that we'd like to avoid. So if you're looking for a single source, it's buncombecounty.org. If you're looking for specific guidance, it's the CDC or the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. On our website, we have a ton of information, but just want to talk about it quickly. We've got public health updates. So for instance, yesterday we published an update on the number of new cases that have been identified in Buncombe County, as well as any information we had about those cases. Additionally, we posted best practices for cleaning, maintaining social distancing. But we've also got resources on this website. So if you're an employer that's impacted by this financially, there are resources there for you. If your employees are facing unemployment, there's resources there for you as well that'll direct you to some of the other folks on this call. But it's a great resource, and we just want to point everybody to it and just remind folks that it is a dynamic time and things are changing, but rumors don't necessarily help in terms of all of us working together.
So Tim, last week, both locally and at the state level, we saw a lot of mandated business closures for very specific kinds of business. And in other states with more advanced outbreaks, we've seen these shelter-in-place directives put in place, which effectively shutter many businesses that are, for example, still operational today in North Carolina. Can you provide any insight? Do you expect this to happen in North Carolina? And how can we best prepare for those circumstances?
Sure. I think that's a great question, Clark, and I'll start with, no guidance has been issued at this point from the state level, and so I just want to be clear on that. However, I also want to be sort of open and admit, that in times of crisis, hurricanes, natural disasters, it's commonplace in our communities to determine which businesses are essential, but additionally, which individuals in the community within, governments or any other organizations are essential as well. And so we've started to see those actions take place, and over the weekend, guidance was issued from the state to begin the process of identifying those essential businesses. And so I view this as a precautionary measure so that we're ready if and when that time comes. At this point, there is no official guidance, but I would continue to remind folks that in our community, there will be essential functions that we need to keep running in order for our community to continue to move forward. Examples are hospitals, pharmacies, grocers, manufacturers of products like, that are PPE related. There's lots of examples in the community of essential functions, and so I wanted to let folks know that we fully expect that there would be some exceptions if any policy is put in place like that.
Thank you, Tim. If you could hang out, I expect we'll have some questions for you at the end of the call.
Gladly. Thanks, Clark.
Rodney, I'm going to pivot to you. Rodney Embler with Asheville's NC Works office. Thanks so much. I know your team especially is underwater at the moment dealing with the impacts of this crisis. In the first week alone, we saw dramatic job losses, especially in our small business community and our hospitality and tourism community. Please help us understand the current processes and programs that are in place today for dislocated workers. If businesses are making those hard decisions, how can they best direct and support employees who are being impacted?
Okay, thanks, Clark, for having me. I appreciate you taking the time to put this event together. What I'd say is for any job seekers who wish to apply for unemployment, the most suggested method is on the DES website, and that's des.nc.gov. There's still a very large number of job seekers in our area who also don't have computer or internet access, so I would suggest that they reach out to our customer call center, and that number is 888-737-0259, and they would be able to assist. I would also encourage folks to be as patient as they can during this time, as the resources currently in place to file are strained, to say the least. And job seekers should please take the time to fill out their claim as accurately as possible. If their layoff is related to COVID-19, they should choose appropriate reasons for separation in those sections, because some previous requirements are being waived by the governor, so it's important to be as detailed as possible. Now, we get a lot of questions as far as amount that might be available to job seekers for their unemployment and length. So in regards to that, right now the maximum benefit amount remains at $350 a week for 12 weeks. We should encourage folks just to continue checking that site that I gave you earlier regularly for any updates regarding additional benefits that might become available. In the past, during other difficult times, sometimes they've extended the length, and other times they've extended or raised the amount available, and that hasn't been determined yet. So please stick to checking that DEUS website for that. I also want to remind folks that unfortunately the Career Center staff at NC Works are not able to answer questions that are related to individual UI claims. If you're just not sure, the best thing to do would be to reach out to the customer call center. There's also an online form you can fill out, and they'll contact you if you can't remain on hold.
Thank you, Rodney. You know, our greatest concern, of course, is for employees and families that have already been impacted and will be impacted. Can you share with us, you know, what's the volume of job openings look like at NC Works right now? In other words, are you seeing demand in the marketplace that either is continuing or perhaps emerging out of the crisis that might also help generate some temporary or permanent income for dislocated workers?
Yes, Clark. In fact, there are. Just since last Thursday, I've gotten phone calls from a landscaping company, two of our local staffing agencies, a senior living facility, and a large manufacturer. It's also my understanding that the U.S. Census still has open positions available. Those can pay up to $19 an hour, maybe more, depending on how many hours you work. I even spoke with Ingalls this morning, and they need help in all of their stores as well as their warehouse. They're all saying, hey, don't forget about us. Another thing to note that is part of the unemployment process, UI claimants in some cases are required to register with us here at NC Works. So I would encourage any employers out there who are listening and you have job openings to reach out to us as soon as you possibly can so we can get your jobs on our website. We're speaking with so many job seekers every day. We're distributing resources to help them through the process. So we'd love to include your business in that information.
Completely counterintuitive, right? That we might be seeing an uptick in new openings, but certainly sometimes, whether it's temporary or permanent alternative employment, that might be a means to achieving greater income than unemployment. So they can find those job openings on the NC Works site, as well as traditional websites like Local Jobs, Asheville Jobs, the Venture Asheville website and job board. So we're going to continue to try to bring attention to those job openings in the community. Lastly, Rodney, I understand that your office likewise has recently closed to walk-ins. I don't want people to get the wrong impression. Can you clarify for everyone on the call, help us understand how local residents needing your vital services can access you even though you can't walk in unannounced?
Right. Thanks for bringing that up, Clark. I want to emphasize that we're only closed to walk-in traffic. Our career advisors and our employment team are still in the office Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. The quickest way probably to reach us is by phone, and our telephone number here is 828-251-6200. We have a local website, ncworksasheville.com, that's full of valuable information. And also, even though we're actually closed to walk-in traffic, we have a station set up inside our entranceway where job seekers can pick up information on UI and other resources. In some instances, and depending on the situation, we can possibly set up an in-person appointment, not only with the job seekers, but employers. But we're here, career counseling, job search, resume assistance, referrals to community service agencies, whatever's needed. One of our new mottos that came in from Raleigh the other day is that NC Works is still working. So we'll continue to do so.
Well, we appreciate you being on the front lines, and thank you for clarifying. So whether it's by phone, by internet, or by drop by to your front office there, they will be able to access the support that they need to access either unemployment insurance or other programs.
Yes, correct.
I'm going to pivot for a second to Nathan Ramsey, Executive Director at the Land of Sky, as well as the Mountain Area Workforce Development Board. Nathan, clearly you and your staff are also going 24/7 right now. Can you share how recent actions at the state perhaps have extended or enhanced a lot of the programs that Rodney's talked about that are available through the NC Works division?
Absolutely, Clark, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of this conversation. And you know, what's even in challenging times, you know, what's uplifting is to see our region, our community come together and to address these challenges. So thank you for you and your team for organizing this town hall and helping us disseminate information to our region. Certainly there have been some changes. You know, Governor Cooper has made some executive orders to open unemployment insurance benefits as a result of COVID-19 to individuals, so they don't have to go through the same hoops that others had to previously. So, you know, that's very positive. And you know, last week they processed 70,000 new claims in North Carolina. To put that in context, that's they processed about 50,000 claims in the previous 6 months. You know, as of now, I think there are over 100,000 claims. So, you know, we know this is going to continue to increase, but you know, because of COVID-19 in the governor's executive order, it said people are not going to be required to look for jobs during this time. Part of that's to encourage social distancing, as Rodney did mention. We still have employers that are trying to hire and wanting to hire, and you can go to ncworks.gov or call your local career center to find out more information about that. If you're an employer wanting to post jobs, we can certainly support you in that effort. Workers who have had their benefit, who had the hours cut back, can now apply for UI benefits. They can also apply online and over the phone. They don't necessarily have to have an in-person appointment. I know that they've had challenges getting through to the call center and through the website just because of the sheer volume, but the Division of Employment Security is working 24/7 to expand their capacity. And also, employers won't be held responsible for anyone seeking benefits because of the outbreak. So under previous law, for a temporary layoff, that employer would have to front those funds. That's not the case now.
So the waiting period has been waived, and the chargeback to the employer has been waived. Do you expect any new or different support coming out of the state legislature or out of the feds at the moment?
So certainly everyone saw the news headlines regarding what's happening in DC. It's anticipated that there will be additional support from the federal government. It's also the state government. Those conversations are ongoing. As Rodney mentioned earlier, currently in North Carolina, the maximum benefit you can receive is $350 per week. The average benefit historically, up until this crisis, has been about $280 a week. So, you know, it's really not enough of money for someone to pay their expenses. So we anticipate there may be some changes to that. That hasn't taken place now, so we can only share with you what current law is. But, you know, this is unique in an economic crisis that, you know, it's not like the Great Recession or other times we've experienced permanent job loss. Most of the employers, I think, and most of the individuals who are losing their jobs, they intend to go back to their employer. But, you know, we don't know how long this will last. Governor Cooper just announced that public schools in North Carolina will not open back up until May 15th. So, you know, I wish this was over tomorrow, but, you know, we're going to have several weeks and perhaps another month or two of this.
Nathan, for so many of our businesses, small and large, they've never had to contemplate reductions in force over the last decade of expansion. What's the best way to access information and educate themselves on the process and procedures of temporary and permanent layoffs? Do you have any resources you could suggest?
So certainly the first place they should go is the North Carolina Department of Commerce Division of Employment Security website. They have Q&A on that website now. There's a coronavirus tab that you can click on, and they have the most updated information for employers and also those that have been impacted by the public health restrictions and the effort to try to flatten the curve. And so, But also, you know, I want people to know we're here for them. They can always reach out to Land of Sky Mountain Area Workforce Development Board. My email is nathan@landofsky.org, and we will help them try to find the answers to their questions. And certainly, I know Jackie's on this call, and you can always consult a very capable and competent attorney like Jackie and many others in our region.
I'll ask you to be a little bit speculative here for me, Nathan. I know we have a lot of self-employed, sole proprietors, freelancers in our economy. Have you heard any discussion at the state or federal level about support for those individuals?
So they know that's a challenge because many individuals do not qualify for UI. You know, they weren't paid into the system. Just over the weekend, one question came up from small businesses in our region about would the owner be eligible for UI benefits, and if that owner was being paid a salary and covered through UI, they would be eligible for unemployment. But you're right, all those that work in a gig economy, working as independent contractor, right now, you know, there's not an opportunity to assist them. You know, their health allows, and they're not in a high-risk population, as Rodney indicates. You know, there are still jobs out there for individuals to pursue. There are local companies that need additional staffing during this time, and so we'd encourage people to access that. You know, the reality is, unless that benefit amount is increased, you know, applying for unemployment in and of itself is not going to solve your challenges. So we're going to try to do a full court press to help people, and so they can get the help they receive. But you know, unemployment benefits is just one piece of that puzzle.
Thanks for all you and your staff are doing, Nathan. Jackie, let me put it to you, and thanks again for making time to be with us this afternoon. Would love to hear what concerns you are hearing from your clients and what sort of guidance you're offering during such unpredictable times.
Thank you, Clark, and thank you to the Asheville Chambers for convening this town hall. It's very timely and needed. Of course, I've been getting a lot of questions from employers about, you know, if you have employees who are displaying symptoms, respiratory symptoms, what do you do? Can you require employees to go home? If you have employees who've been impacted by COVID-19, do you provide paid leave? What do we do if we have to lay off versus a furlough? What do we do as far as if we have to temporarily close a business? So lots of questions from the employment community. Some of that has recently been answered as of last week with the passage of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which was passed by Congress and signed into law by President Trump on March 18th. And with regard to that particular bill, there are several provisions that are in that bill that are very relevant to the employment context, to both employers and employees. The two main provisions that I think are of really significance to the employment sector is the Emergency Family Medical Leave Expansion Act and the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act. So the Emergency Family Medical Leave Expansion Act is just what it says. It's an expansion of the FMLA leave. And there are a couple of changes in there that have been enacted to specifically apply to COVID. So specifically, you have the traditional FMLA reasons for leave, and it's unpaid. What this has done with the Emergency Expansion Act, it has added as an additional grounds for taking FMLA leave up to 12 weeks is for employees who need to take leave in order to care for a child or children who are out of school due to COVID, or who their child care, you know, if they were in a daycare center, or a child caregiver is unavailable due to the coronavirus. And so it adds that as an additional grounds for FMLA leave. The other significant change, though, is for those who are taking leave to be able to take care of a child who is out of school. It actually applies to employees who have been on the job for 30 days. That's a change from traditional reasons for which you would take FMLA leave and the amount of time you would have to be on the job. The other thing is it also provides the first 10 days of your leave would be unpaid, but we'll talk about that in a minute under the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act. But on the 11th day of those who are taking leave to take care of children who are out of school due to the coronavirus, employers must provide the paid leave starting on the 11th day. That is at 2/3 of the employee's regular salary, and it's capped at $200 a day. That then leads into the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act, which all employers under, all of these are applicable to employers who have 500 or less employees. And under the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act, it says that for 2 weeks or 10 days, employers are required to provide paid sick leave days for employees who are having to take days off due to either displaying symptoms of the coronavirus or being told to quarantine, orders to quarantine or isolate, or if advised by your healthcare provider that you should self-quarantine. Those are all covered under this Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act. For employees who have to take leave for that reason or any of those three reasons, you are paid, you're provided sick leave at your regular pay up to $500 per day. If you need to take leave under the Emergency Paid Sick Leave to care for someone else who has COVID, or who has been advised to quarantine or isolate, or if you have to take care of a child who is out of school due to the coronavirus, then you are also entitled to take 10 days of paid sick leave, but that is paid at 2/3 of the employee's regular wages, and that's kept at $200 a day. There are provisions in there. There are a lot of exemptions in there, such as for healthcare providers. There's also an exemption that the employees who have less than 50 employees can seek an exemption from the Department of Labor. But that's sort of the whole package of what, sort of an overview of what the main two relevant provisions of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act provides.
So Jackie, I hear a lot of resources there that will help help the employee that is dealing with caretaking or dealing with their own illness or dealing with a mandated quarantine. 2 follow-up questions for you. That was a lot to digest. Are there reliable websites where people can visit and sort of determine their ability to be, to access some of those?
Yes. So I hate to say this, there's not really a website that a lot of labor employment lawyers, including our law firm, we do have on our website, like a lot of other employment lawyers, have listed sort of bullet points that people can go to and look and see if it's applicable to them or not, and what options and resources they can look for to see how to, if they need more information about the leave, whether you're an employee or if you're the employer. There's also for employers, there is a tax credit for employers who do have to or who are providing the emergency paid sick leave. So there are tax credits for employers. So I would say that any employment lawyer could probably give you that information. And most of us, like I know for our firm, we actually have it posted on our website.
Great. we will follow up with our employment law community here in Asheville to probably develop an FAQ on that, because I think there's going to be a lot more follow up on that. You and I were having this conversation last week. Clearly, our economy's seen lots of different kinds of setbacks over time. From 9/11 to the housing crisis, this one is different. Would love to know just any thoughts in the midst of this kind of uncertainty, what kind of things should be top of mind for business leadership, for business owners, thinking about resiliency and thinking about, however short or long-term lived this particular moment of crisis is, how can we emerge on the other side to get back into growth and job creation mode? Anything top of mind for you?
Yeah, I think key for the business industry is to be able to have, hopefully that these are temporary layoffs. To the extent that businesses are required to close or required to have furloughs or lay off employees, the hope is that these are temporary layoffs and that employers will bring back the employees. I think that's the biggest thing that will help the economy regenerate and go back to where we were. You don't want these to be long-term layoffs. There are also implications. I get a lot of questions from employers where, obviously we're at uncertain times. We don't know how long these layoffs or business closures may be. I've gotten lots of calls from employers where you can trigger the WARN Act. So there are different things that factor in depending on if this is a temporary situation, which is what we hope it is, versus if it ends up being a long-term situation.
Clarify for all of our participants what the WARN Act is and what that obligates the employer to.
Yes, so the WARN Act applies to any employers who have at least 100 employees or more. And if you are anticipating doing a layoff of at least 33% of your workforce, and it's going to be for more than 60 days, then you're required to give notice to employees that will allow them to prepare for that before they're actually laid off. There are exceptions in the WARN Act, such as when there are natural disasters. Obviously, the coronavirus was not envisioned when the WARN Act was created, and so it doesn't fit within the definition of a natural disaster. So what most of us employment lawyers have done is advise employers that if you anticipate that this is going to be a permanent layoff or a layoff that's going to be over 60 days and you have 100 or more employees, that you really need to seek legal counsel to discuss what notice is required and the information that you need to provide your employees as far as unemployment benefits and things of that nature.
Thank you. Tell you what, I'm going to pivot for a moment to look at some of the questions that have been generated from conversation. I have gotten consistently a few questions from our callers. So I might ask Rodney, well, I'll ask each of our participants to go around one more time. I think we each shared maybe different websites. If you could each reference those websites one more time, just as a resource guide, and slowly so callers can take note of those that they need to visit. Rodney, we'll start with you.
Okay, the first site that I mentioned is the actual site where you go to file your unemployment claim, and that is des.nc.gov. If you want to access the NC Works Career Center services, that is ncworksasheville.com. And you can also do job searches on the ncworks.gov website.
And Rodney, if I wrote this down correctly, your local number is 828-251-6200.
Yes, that is correct.
Great. Nathan, could you likewise share any online resources?
Absolutely, Clark. So our website for Land to Sky is landtosky.org. For Mountain Area Workforce Development Board, it's mountainareaworks.org. And you can access my email and my phone number on those websites, but my email is nathan@landofsky.org, and my cell phone is area code 828-768-3216. You can call or text that number, and I'll try to respond as quickly as I can.
Tim, you had a few, so I would ask you to share the employee health and safety or the health department resource, so people would understand sort of general sanitation standards that need to be upkept during the time, and maybe also for sort of breaking news. Where's the Buncombe County Emergency Operations Center releasing data on a regular basis?
Yeah, Clark, glad to do so. For general information about what's going on in Buncombe County related to COVID-19, please go to the Buncombe County website, which is buncombecounty.org. And from there, there's a banner where you can select the COVID-19 Information Center. For questions related to sanitation standards, the email address is ehrequest@buncombecounty.org. And I would also add, I did not mention this earlier, but for those that have questions about navigating any system, 211 is a resource that is available, which is the United Way. And so wanted to share that as well.
I'm glad you said that. The 211 system run by United Way locally is a tremendous resource for all kinds of questions that you may be asking yourself as a dislocated worker in terms of the social safety nets that are available in this community. So 211, you dial it as it sounds, is a great resource for employees that might be encountering this for the first time. And Jackie, because we are going around the room here, would you have any website resources, your own or others, that you care to offer?
Yeah, you can just go to Robertson Stevens website, www.roberts-stevens.com. And we have that information about the Families First Coronavirus Act and bullet point of the major points relative to employers and employees. And that can take you to additional sources from there.
Thank you so much. So I will reiterate, as I did at the top of the call, that we're going to start moving through questions using the Q&A function on Zoom, not the chat function. So if you've put a question into the chat function, please hop over to the Q&A button instead. Rodney, I've got just a quick housekeeping question for you, and that is, some of the early layoffs that happened, individuals may not have listed coronavirus specifically on their unemployment application. Is there a way for them to correct that now so they're eligible for these resources that are rolling out? Or do they even have to?
That's probably a question that I would refer to the customer call center. I don't believe that it can be changed now, especially if the claim has already been initiated from the previous week. But reaching out to the customer contact center through the form or the telephone number would probably be the safest bet.
251-6200.
Yes, and then we'll refer them to, or they could directly call the customer call center, which is 888-737-0259.
Thank you. Tim, I've got a question.
Sorry, interrupt you, Clark. For new folks who might be filing their claim, whenever they get to the question that asks why they're filing, there are two options under there for COVID. One says, I lost my job due to COVID-19, or my hours were cut due to COVID-19. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a complete layoff. It could also be that hours were lost.
So that is a few questions we've seen in the Q&A thread have to do with reduced hours. What sort of resources are available to someone to augment lost income?
Well, they'll take into DES will take into account the pay and the amount of weeks and the eligibility requirements. But I would just encourage folks who have experienced any kind of loss of hours at all, it doesn't hurt to try to apply. I would go ahead and do that.
Okay. since I've got you on the hook, let me also ask, owners of an S Corp who are receiving W-2 compensation from that S Corp, are they eligible?
Again, Clark, I wouldn't feel comfortable answering that question. I would direct those folks to the call center as well.
Clark, this is Nathan, and that was the question that came up over the weekend, and DES did clarify they would be eligible to file, so they should go ahead and file. As Rodney said earlier, it never hurts to file. So if it turns out, they deny the claim, that's one thing, but if you had a LLC, S Corp, the owner of the business was a W-2 employee through that, they would be eligible for UI.
There's also a thread for nonprofits that wanted to clarify that they likewise, their employees would be eligible for unemployment. I'm assuming the answer to that's yes, Rodney?
My assumption would be yes.
They've been paying into it. But Tim, I'm going to give you the hard one, which is the crystal ball that we all wish we had in this conversation. This question is specifically related to, for example, salon closures that happened just at the end of last week. Any prediction on how long these closures will be mandated? Will they be expanded? Will they be reduced? Will there be a middle ground in coming weeks?
Sure, and I appreciate you adding that that's a difficult question, Clark. What we've said from our public health folks is that every day we reassess the information as it comes in. Earlier over the weekend and today we'll receive new results from our testing last week. We administered 300 tests through our drive-through testing locations. And based on that information, every day we reassess. We have set sort of a reassessment of at the end of this week to see if there's any changes to our guidance. So the 27th, I believe, is the date we set. But what I would like to say, and there's no guidance on this yet, but if we look to the world and see how responses have changed, you can see that responses have become more tight, and so I would expect that some of these changes may last longer than through this week, and I think we should be prepared for the quote-unquote marathon that will be our COVID response. So I'm not sure if that helps, but I think a reassessment at the end of the week is something that you should expect, but I think we should also be realistic. So.
No, thank you. I think a straight talk is more helpful right now. Thank you. I'm going to keep you on the hot seat though to talk a little bit about testing because there are both. I think there's some confusion in the news because there are both public testing sites as well as private testing sites all across the Asheville metro area. Can you help us understand which ones remain open? Is it recommended practice that someone, for example, send their employees to be tested to verify that it's not in their facility? What's the latest on testing right now?
Sure. So our drive-through testing locations are not currently open this week. Our practical reason for that is to limit our exposure of our public health officials and law enforcement folks to COVID-19 at this time, as well as preserve some of the PPE, the masks, the gowns, things like that at this early stage. What I would say is if you have symptoms of COVID-19, you should consult with your doctor or your urgent care, as you would with any other sickness, and they'll direct you to the appropriate test. We do want to rely on those medical professionals on testing because we don't want to test for something when you don't have the appropriate symptoms. So that is the recommended guidance at this point. Does that answer your question, Clark?
So we're not doing mass testing on asymptomatic residents, only on those that are presenting with symptoms.
Correct.
And there are current testing facilities open across Buncombe and the metro area, even though that it may not, even though the Buncombe County sites may be closed today, there are other private testing sites available.
That's correct. And some guidance that's being passed to me real time here. Our recommendation is please do not just go directly to the ER That is not recommended. Additionally, please don't just go directly to your doctor's office. Please call in advance your primary care, call your urgent care, and then I have a phone number here, which is 828-250-5109. And that'll connect you to our Buncombe County Public Health folks who can advise on those that would believe that they have symptoms.
Thank you. I've gotten a question, Tim, about, again, looking forward to, let's say we have an employee of ours that tests positive. What protocols are in place to, beyond isolating and bringing treatment to that individual? Are there protocols that the workplace would have to think about, or go through and in response to having a positive test in your workforce?
Absolutely. So the key would be to notify our public health folks. Our communicable disease nurses are basically like private investigators. And so once they're notified of a positive case, they begin a process to identify everyone that is in quote unquote close contact with the individual and to notify all of those folks. So super important to notify public health of that occurrence, and then they will do sort of the legwork on the investigation and advise you on next steps, which is a good segue to a topic that's come up. As our communicable disease folks do their research, they will notify you if you've been in close contact. So it's a very proactive sort of stance that we take. So if you haven't heard, then that's generally positive news. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you. I'm getting a lot of questions around sort of the FMLA flexibility that Jackie talked about. I've got two sort of quick thoughts, and Jackie, would love to hear yours in terms of really continuing to help distill this down for the community. We will definitely work to put an FAQ on our site that we've been using for daily and hourly breaking news for business. www.ashevillechamber.org/coronavirus. Additionally, if that is of specific interest to you, as well as some of the very thorny financial considerations of business continuity through times like this, I would encourage you to dial into a virtual town hall we're hosting tomorrow. My colleague Corey Atkins will be leading one with a number of financial resources on the panel. And I'm sure we'll touch on this again in more detail. That's at 3 p.m. Tuesday, March 24th, which is tomorrow. The Zoom invite is on that same webpage. So I know we'll continue to try to refine that as much as possible to help people understand the real impacts. Jackie, any other thoughts on kind of distilling those high-level takeaways for the Family First stuff?
Yeah, so I would just say that if you've got, if you have employees who are going to, or who are out because they're either carrying, if they have symptoms of coronavirus or in quarantine, or if they're caring for someone, then they're going to fall within one of these leave exceptions with Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act or with the expansion of the FMLA. And so I would just suggest that you, I think if you look at our bullet point on the website, you can actually figure it out. But if you have additional questions, to reach out to an employment lawyer. Most employment lawyers can answer these questions for you over the phone in just a couple of minutes.
And has that expansion formally been enacted?
So it will actually take effect on April 2nd. So anyone who is requesting leave, it will be effective April 2nd, and it sunsets, it ends on December 31st.
Okay. Follow up, Jackie, I'll keep you on the hot seat. So can that emergency sick leave also be used to supplement the pay of workers if, for example, there's a mandated government business closure? In other words,
yes.
would that be a safety net for those folks?
So it depends. So if there is a mandate that you actually close down, that the business closed down, you would not be able to use the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act. It really is somebody who is taking out for one of the reasons that we've talked about before. Instead, if you've got the shutdown, then that's where you're going to go into the unemployment benefits, is where you can go ahead and apply for unemployment benefits. And of course, as Nathan has already pointed out, the governor issued an executive order that eases the requirements for someone who is unemployed or temporarily laid off or even reduced hours as a result of the coronavirus.
Thank you. I've gotten, I'm going to keep, realize we're approaching our hour, but I'm going to try to get through a few more questions here. Rodney, we've got a lot of seasonal and part-time workers in our economy as well. Someone mentions the fact that, you know, they may only employ their a part-time employee for 6 to 10 hours a week, but they know that individual may maintain other part-time employment. Is that person able to apply for that reduced hours unemployment you talk about? Can you unmute first?
Sorry about that. Yes, as long as it's related to losing the hours due to COVID-19, I would say that process is going to be a lot easier for them and make them more eligible.
Thank you. Nathan, I think this is for you. You know, to clarify, the WARN Act really just places the burden on employers of a certain size to create more transparent communication if a reduction is coming or is planned. There are no additional resources available through the WARN Act. It simply requires them to be more communicative and to provide more notice. Is that right?
That is correct. And, you know, we would love for our employers to notify us and let us know when they're furloughing employees, because we need to send that information to Raleigh and to our colleagues at Department of Commerce and others. You know, we're working. There's the state has applied for a national emergency grant to help support the workers who have been laid off as a result of COVID-19. And they've asked us to respond to those. So to Jackie's point earlier, there may be instances where a business is required to file a WARN notice. In other cases, when they're not, you know, we don't know about those layoffs until those individuals, you know, start reaching out to us. So we would encourage them to reach out to us, let us know, and because we're here to, you know, support them. And again, my email is nathan@landofsky.org.
Thank you, Nathan. This is for the panel. I think we've heard this news a few times, but can you specify how long an employer needs to have been on payroll before they can apply for assistance? So for example, they need to be on payroll 30 days, then experience this impact before they would be eligible for any of these services.
Clark, go ahead, Jackie.
Go ahead, Nathan. Go ahead, Nathan.
I was just going to say that goes to, you know, the base period is how their benefits are calculated. And so, you know, the base period is based on 4 of the last 5 completed calendar quarters. And so, you know, I just got a question from someone, I guess, that's on this town hall. They've just hired someone about a month or 2 ago. Would that person be eligible for UI? Most likely not, but that's an opportunity to reach out to that employer call center also at DES, which is 866-278-3822.
And I'll just add, for the Family Medical Leave Expansion Act, it's for any employee who's been employed at least 30 days. If you're taking leave under traditional FMLA leave, then of course you have to be employed for 12 months or either 1,250 hours. And as far as the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act, that's for, you can start taking leave if you've been on the job within the first 60 days. So that takes effect immediately for the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act.
Thank you, Jackie. There's several threads on here from a great number of small business owners in this community who are curious about access to disaster relief loans, that kind of thing. To those questioners, I would say, please do plan on joining a similar call tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. And if you're looking for the Zoom link, again, go to the business resources page that I've referenced here before, and you'll see the exact town hall and the link to that Zoom invite for that call, because we're going to be talking with representatives from the SBA, the SBTC, our local community lenders, as well as sort of traditional lenders, to talk about a number of those programs. And I think we're going to continue to see a lot of innovation and a lot of new resources coming down primarily from the federal government. But even at the local and state level, there are a lot of discussion around relief funds, specifically targeting our small business community. So I would encourage you to dial into that call tomorrow. And forgive me while I just scan for. Well, this probably is the best question to end on, and it is this, which is a link of this call will be found and hosted for the long term at ashevillechamber.org/coronavirus. There's a whole host of resources for business available there, resources for dislocated workers, as well as these ongoing virtual town halls that we will advertise on that page. And we'll also endeavor to compile all the questions we didn't get to today and post them on an FAQ on that page. Please do plan to join us tomorrow for financial insights and guidance for business continuity. Just to give you a sense for who will be joining: Sandra Dennison, who's the Regional Center Director for the Small Business and Technology Development Center; Sharon Oxendine, Director of the Western Women's Business Center; Matt Raker, Executive Director at Mountain BizWorks; and Joe Ward, who's a Regional Executive with First Bank. Thank you, Tim Love, Rodney Embler, Nathan Ramsey, Jackie Grant. I realize you all have a full week of obligations, and I'm grateful for you sharing your expertise with us today. I think this will be the first of many in our attempts to keep our business community in the loop on this fast-changing crisis we're living and working through. On behalf of the Chamber and the EDC, thanks to each of our participants who dialed in as well for doing your part to take care of your employees, to strengthen your business, and to care for our community during the COVID-19 crisis. We look forward to keeping in touch with you. Thanks everyone for being with us today.